Welcome back. And to make the pun again, we are picking up the thread of muslin. Saif, this is scarf. This looks so cute and so nice colors, see? This is muslin as well, isn't it?
Well, again, this is one of today's product, and I must be very careful to say.
Can we just display it?
Certainly.
This is a ladies' scarf or
yes, it
or
is.
gents?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, and it is actually designed by a very well-known Bangladeshi designer who lives in London, Razia Wahed, and she is a very famous one. She was part of our project in terms of doing designs, and she has taken the idea, the concept of muslin as a light product, but taken it to the next generation in terms of giving it a very modern flavor. So she wanted to do that, and we participated with her.
Fine, my
yes,
goodness.
yes, it is. Okay, and then she wanted to do this in an abstract manner, move away from the traditional motifs, and I was quite happy with that, because I do believe, and this is where I suppose one of the questions comes from, that how do we take it forward?
Right.
You see, muslin was always used by the rich, by the royalty, and in a certain form. So it is used by the men, for their what they called angar khas, which is like a Punjabi that we say these days, male garment, or it is used as a sari, or it is used as a covering over gifts.
They used to have this malmal ka kurta.
Yes.
The malmal, again the same name.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
We didn't talk about how malmal became muslin.
Well, the reasons for it is that in India, the term muslin is never used. It's completely an anglicized description, and it evidently came about when Marco Polo noticed it in the city of Mosul in Iraq, which was actually a trading center. So he saw these fabrics pass through the trading center, and it was named from Mosul as muslin. But in Bengal, in India, it is always known as malmal, and all the trading receipts talk about it as malmal. So we should actually be sticking to the word of malmal rather than the colonial term. However, this went further because the French called it mousseline. Some say because it was soft as moss, and that is the reason why. So all these variations happened, and of course there were certain other names. The Mughals had very beautiful names for the different varieties of muslin, because there was not one variety. There would be different varieties based on count, based on design, based on usage, based even on the artisan who has made it. So we have started now putting on the artisans' names also.
Malmal will always be malmal, whatever name you give it.
Absolutely. Rose by any other name, that's true. And our intention, Neaz, is actually, when we started to tell the story of muslin, people said, yeah, that's fine, but what was it? Because every time we came up against this barrier of what did it feel like, where has it gone? And that is the reason why we stepped from out of the pages of the book into sort of the weaver's loom and started to work with the weavers. And we found that it was in their DNA, but they had lost it over the last 100 or so years. And they were not only they had lost it, but they were also going down the trend of increasing commercial and more coarse production. So that's why we tried to change them, and we succeeded in doing this.
Did you have to teach them how to do it, or as you said, it was in their genes, yes, I see, but then they didn't know so much about the history?
But there is a story that when these were woven on the loom, then the way they would remember the weaving patterns is through a mnemonic. So for example, we remember through the mnemonic of 30 days at September, April, like that. So they would have their shlok, which in Bangla is that kind of a mathematical pattern, a set of rhymes. And I had read of these rhymes in a beautiful book by the Bangla Academy, where they were collected together. And I remember reading the first two lines to my weaver, and he said the whole poem. So I said to him, how do you know this poem? And he said, I don't know how I know it. So I said, who taught it to you? And he says, I don't know who taught it to me. So I said, how did you remember it? He says, I must have heard it. I know it, but I don't know what it means. So somewhere an unconscious trigger had been pulled, and the poem had come through, which tells me that there are some latent DNA perhaps. When I started working with them, they were fascinated by the story, but the reality was that they had been working with the coarser yarn for so long that they'd forgotten the skill. This is like, going from, pedaling a bicycle to suddenly driving a car. I know the road is the same, but this is tricky. The vehicle is different. And the real obstacles were the humidity, the tension in the loom, the reed. You mentioned before that it must be a highly skilled loom or something. The reed is what the thread passes through.
Right.
And there are 1800, even beginning with 1200 teeth in this 50-inch, approximately 50-inch length of reed. For muslin, you need to go up to 2000, 2500, 2800. So the bamboo becomes thinner, and we had to find that bamboo. We had to make those reeds, and then we broke that 2800 and up to 3000 barrier of that reed. And then we started to practice monitoring humidity, monitoring temperature, and through that, I think we supported them. Every time there was a problem and they lost confidence, we'd try and find a set of solutions, and they would trial them and come out with the right one. So that's how we progressed in this. And that's how we actually came up with a reality that, okay, there was a story. We were laying claim through historical evidence. Now here is practical proof.
Right. This was designed by a lady living in London.
Yes, Razia Wahed, a lovely friend, yes.
Yep. Razia, what did you say?
Wahed.
Wahed. And it must have been produced somewhere again back in Bangladesh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It could be produced here. The idea came from here. Because again, what I like about it is that living in London, she has fused the needs of today's generation with the fabric of the past. And so we did an experiment on this. We came out with different variations of these, and that is one side of it.
Right.
On the other side, we continue to experiment with the classical patterns, because we want to really root this story of our weavers and their capabilities. So we are going from 300 to 400 using the motifs of the past, and then we hope to break up to the 500 count, which would be unique.
Right. As you said that it was never, the malmal or muslin was never meant for everybody.
No.
It was for the rich, the nobility, and the kings and the queens and their daughters and children. So it will remain like that because it takes so much of time, expertise, and again, a lot of money to be invested in this, and then of course if somebody produces it, he has to be paid for that. So.
Yeah.
But is there, in your experience, is there future for this kind of product today? Of course there are so many rich people, see, but you have to make them aware that this product has made a comeback. See, it's available now, see, and they can, it's not just part of history, but they can use it today and show off.
Yes, absolutely right. And it was an item of, as you say, show off, or let's say an item of ornamentation.
Yes.
So often you see in the paintings of the old, and I've got some in this book obviously, you see that the Mughals are wearing, let's say, silk, and on top of it they would wear the muslin, because you could see the silk right through it. There's no doubt about it. As a matter of fact, and I just show this as a curiosity, in this particular last page is the usual photograph of the author, that's me, but it is taken through muslin.
Great.
So you can see
and
that
it's still recognizable.
And it's still very much recognizable. As a matter of fact, if you see a photograph that was taken at the same time, taken by Shaidul when I was just looking at different samples of muslin. It's not the finest, but it must be around 500 count to 550 count that I was looking at, and just taken through that. So that's how transparent it could be. And therefore, coming back to your question, we have tried to do is re-establish the credentials of this. We have taken samples of different plants in the region, from Assam, from hill tracts of Bangladesh, from the Meghna, and we have grown them next to the river in similar conditions, taken the DNA of that plant, our plant, and matched it with the DNA of the Kew Garden plant. And we have come out with plant which is approximately 70% of the original, which is pretty good. And we're trying to use that cotton in a sparing manner into the yarn. So we're trying to, re-establish that credentials, not simply on the basis of a legend, but also on the basis of a laboratory result. So that's one of the things. Now we are trying to also make sure that the weavers are producing and getting confidence. So recently there was a Jamdani festival, an excellent festival in Dhaka that was held by the National Crafts Council, where they produced saris of 200 count. Now before we had done this, it would have been absolutely impossible. But the weavers have seen that we have been producing of 300, 350, 400 count. So now a larger group of weavers is confident of producing up to 200, and I'm very delighted that that has happened. And that has gone to market. We have produced regularly of 300, and some of our products have been sold. The difference is that we haven't actually taken it into a commercial enterprise, because I believe that our resources are dedicated towards breaking the envelope, towards putting a man on the moon, if you kind of think of that, rather than colonizing that. Okay. However, I completely take your point that we have to bring this out of the shadows of the past and actually display it. And it is my hope that Bangladesh today has a customer base which is far more affluent. If they do not look at only Western models of dresses or habits in terms of everything that we do, whether the dresses that we wear, the food that we eat, but also have an equal interest and pride in what is unique to the rest of the world and belongs to us, then there's a big market there. I know that India produces not equally, I would say, embroidered and delicate cloth, but it produces plain cloth, and it sells them in Japan largely because through their private enterprise and through their cooperatives. So the market is there. And even today, China and even United States, and here in Europe too, I've collected samples of European muslins, so to say. There is a market for this. Two things have to happen. A, as you said, this has to be established in front of the customer in a contemporary fashion and also in a classical fashion.
True. I mean, both. The sari will always remain sari.
Yes. And when we held our festival, which was held in 2016, and this is the a booklet on it, we also held...
Where was it held?
This was held in Dhaka, and this was held on the grounds of the Ahsan Manzil. So it was the palace of the Nawabs.
The history behind it.
Absolutely. And over there we invited designers, and fascinatingly, some of the designers, especially in India, some in Bangladesh and some in the UK, but in India, they had that ability to combine this fabric with contemporary. So they would take a part of it, perhaps just put it on the top, and that bodice would become a slightly different fabric, and they would say there's a touch of muslin there, or the sleeves were like that. In the old days, people who could not afford the full muslin shirt would simply buy cuffs of muslin, and they would tie it, and the muslin cuff would stick out, and everybody would think, oh, he's got a full shirt. Absolutely. So all these even happened 200 years ago. So we are on the cusp of making that happen. What we do require is that the state should look upon it as a very, I would say, recognizable form, a viable industry, and also private enterprise should come forward to take this element of work that has been done to the consumers and to the market.
In one word, are you hopeful?
Yes, I am hopeful.
Well, on that very hopeful note, thank you very much for coming along.
Thank you
for being so,
it's been a pleasure.
giving us such an informative talk. Thank you very much. Thank you, viewers, for being with us, and we hope that you've enjoyed the show as much as we have. And we all learned a great deal about muslin, Dhaka muslin, Meghna muslin, whatever that is, but it is our product, and we should be proud about it. See you sometime again next week, same time, same channel. Bye for now.